So with Genshin 4.0 coming out, obviously, number one, many people will be coming back into the game, or even starting around this time. Number two, there's a new artifact domain releasing with these 2 new sets. And number three, the artifact strongbox is getting an update and will now have all artifact sets from 1.0 until 2.6. So everything before the Dendro era. So I thought this would be quite an interesting topic to cover, since many people are going to start worrying about their artifact builds, and even if it's worth it to try improving their builds. So you might not have thought about it this way, but generally for most characters, personally I would consider builds finished if you have the correct main stats, and then anywhere from 30 to 35 useful substat roles in your substats. Obviously you do not need pieces like this to clear the abyss, but this is a very min-max thing. This is just what endgame players might want to be satisfied, and before an endgame player might decide to move on to other characters. So what does 30 to 35 useful substat roles means? Basically you count these up, these roles here, in each of your artifacts and then check the total amount. Now it's got to be useful substats, which means, say for example, a character like Raiden Shogun, what's useful to her is stuff like crit, energy recharge, attack, but something like defense is not useful. Obviously if using a character like Albedo, defense is useful to him because that increases his damage, and with Nilou, stuff like HP percent is very useful for her because that increases her damage. This is just an arbitrary metric, this isn't anything scientific, this is just from my experience. Like I said, the type of artifacts you end up with before you're satisfied and you try to move on. A lot of endgame players might memorize these numbers, but you don't have to, you can just know it roughly, or you can check the wiki, which will tell you the substat rolls. But for example, you can see here I've got 2 crit rate rolls, 2 energy recharge rolls, 2 crit damage rolls, and 2 attack percent rolls. So that's 8 useful substats here. Here you can see I've got 6 crit and 1 energy recharge, so that's 7. Here is 6 total crit ones and 2 energy recharges, so that's 8 again. Here's 5 crit, and you can count flat substats or not, it's up to you. And then 3 crit, 2 energy recharge rolls. So in total, after adding these all up, I get about 33 useful substats. Now obviously something like crit is technically more DPS than something like attack, but you've got to manage expectations and look at the overall big picture. I can give you another example with my Ayaka build. For her, useful substats are crit, energy recharge, attack percent. Obviously she doesn't benefit from elemental mastery, so this is about 33, depending on if you want to count flat stats or not. Now obviously you have to manage your expectations here, because for example, if you want to get higher than 35, maybe around closer to 40. For example, my Hu Tao build here has about 40 effective substats, but this will take you a long time to farm, and you probably have to spend a long time in the strongbox to get this. And the main reason why it takes a long time is because it's not just about the crit, it's about the other substats as well. These other substats still add up, and that's one of the things that takes a long time. Now having said that, this doesn't apply to all characters. For example, a character like Kazuha or a lot of anemo characters, because you use elemental mastery main stats, these have very low drop rates, and also characters like this don't necessarily need that crit. A lot of their damage is focused in elemental mastery, hence usually characters like this you get the main stats and then don't worry too much. I'm just counting and I've got about 27 user substats on my Kazuha, but this is a more than finished build. Instead of worrying about getting attack and crit on him, I'll just worry about getting attack and crit on my main DPS. So here's the first question of the video: is using the strongbox to improve your builds worth it? Personally, I think if you're working on a DPS, like for example my Hu Tao, and if I didn't have my Hu Tao built, I think to get the 30 substats is definitely worth it. If you're working on Ayaka from scratch, getting the 30 substats on Visitor is definitely worth it too. The only people I wouldn't say it's worth it is if you're a newer player and you really need as much artifact XP as possible. Like you're still building up the early stages of your account, so using all your gold pieces to get the levels up, that could be quite important. But once you reach endgame, I think it's definitely worth it. This is because past a certain point, you have more XP than actually good artifacts to level. So just using stuff like this on pieces you need just increases the amounts of artifacts you will get. So you're just getting your good artifacts quicker. By the way, if you are a new player, you can do this thing called artifact spots, artifact XP spots. Basically daily you can go around the map, and there's routes for this or routes for this, and you can just pick up these investigation spots and get these 1-star artifacts, and slowly but surely that can help you level up your artifacts and get you into a position where you don't need to be doing this anymore. Obviously if you've been playing the game for like a year, then grinding these out daily will just lead to burnout, so you really don't need to. But for newer players this can be nice. You can follow a route, and I believe it takes like 15 minutes a day, and you get quite a lot of XP doing stuff like this. And the best thing about it is that it doesn't cost resin. So for example, with my riding, as you saw my previous artifacts, it was I believe 33 useful substats, which is still very good. Like I said, it's at the end game level, but it is possible for me to improve pieces like this, pieces like that, and then I can get towards 34, 35 substats, maybe even closer to 40. So you can see when the emblem set is available in the strongbox, I've got a lot of artifacts saved up for it. So the next question is, are the new artifact sets worth swapping for? So we can use fischl as an example, and this new artifact set Golden Troupe has a lot of skill damage, and I can use my friend the Genshin Scientist video because he's already calculated it and I don't need to calculate it myself now. But he's getting about a 17% damage increase over Thundering Fury Gladiator. I have Gilded Dreams, but that's basically about the same. So what is a 17% damage increase? Generally, as a rule of thumb, you can think of one substat roll as about 2%. Obviously, something like a crit stat can be slightly higher than 2%, or something like attack percent can be slightly less. But just to keep it simple, I do recommend just thinking about it like 2%. So a 17% damage increase, if you divide that by 2%, that ends up about 8 substat rolls better. So that means if I farm the new set and I get within 8 substat rolls of my current set, and generally speaking, it should be a damage upgrade. So you can see this fischl here is actually 27 useful substats, which means even if I get about 19 useful substats farming this new set, that'll be about the same damage as this. And if you use my 30 to 35 substat benchmark, that would mean a finished build with the new set. You would basically have to get almost perfect artifacts with your old pieces in order for your old pieces to be better. So for me and probably your fischls, that should be worth farming the new set. It's also worth noting that the 2-piece set by itself increases skill damage, so you can even farm 2 pieces at a time. Even just getting 2 pieces and replacing one of these should be an upgrade, and then you can work on the 4-piece set. Also from his video, he's saying the new set is 4% stronger than Husk, which again, if you go by the 2% per substat rule, it's about 2 substats better. For example, looking at my albedo, I don't even have that great pieces on him. So again, for albedo, it might be worth me farming the new set, just because I would be farming anyway for fischl or for other characters. So even getting slightly better pieces than these, it could be an upgrade. Now, if your albedo was more finished than mine, if your albedo had maybe 35 substats, then you'd have to get about 33 substats in the new set to be an upgrade, which would probably take you quite a long time. So at that point, it's up to you to decide. Or it might even not be up to you, it might just be up to RNG and whether you can get more than 33 substats. So I've given you some examples on where the new artifacts can be worth swapping for. I can also give you an example on where it might not be worth swapping for. Here's the other new artifact set, and as you can sort of tell by how it's worded, this can be good for xiao. And I'm sure you've seen other videos by now where it can be very similar or an upgrade to Vermilion depending on your build and your assumptions. As you can see earlier in the Genshin Scientist video, you can see there's quite a big range depending on how many crit rate substats you assume. Now it's quite a big deal because as you can see in the Vermilion set, it doesn't give crit rate, it just gives a lot of attack. And this Vermilion set is also in the strongbox. Whereas this new set, you can see it gives you a lot of crit rate. It gives you up to 36% crit rate. Bear in mind, xiao also ascends with crit rate, and you also get crit rate from the Jade Wing Spear if you're using that. So what that means with this new set, you can be very close to 100% crit rate. And as you know, if you go above 100% crit rate, you're not actually getting any extra damage. So this can be a big problem. For example, if you have the Vermilion set on xiao and you have about 30 substats on that, because it doesn't give you crit rate in the set, you probably have a mix of crit rate, crit damage, energy recharge, attack percent. But if you want to get 30 useful substats with the new set, past a certain point, crit rate will not be a useful substat. So basically, if you're a xiao player and if you are using Jade Wing Spear, it would be very difficult to get a new build with the new set that has higher useful substats than your old build. especially as you get more and more user substats with your Vermilion set, especially if you need the majority of that in crit damage and attack percent rather than crit rate. It can be very difficult. And then on top of that, there are also crit buff cards in the Abyss, which means if you get one of those, you'll probably be capping even before you get 100% crit rate. You could of course use something like Staff of Homer, which gives you crit damage instead of crit rate from Jade Spear. That could give you a bit more leeway on your crit rate substats. But I would like to end this video with a key consideration you might want to take in regards to these new 4.0 sets, which is if we look at this emblem domain here, and it came with the emblem set and the Shimenawa set. This came out in the beginning of Inazuma in 2.0, and emblem was already useful in 2.0 with a lot of older characters, but as more and more patches came out, you know, we got Raiden, we got Yaemiko, we got Yelan, and these characters wanted this new set. And then we can fast forward to 3.0 when the Sumeru artifacts released. And again on launch, this Deepwood memory set was useful for a lot of Dendro characters, but then that was before Nahida released, Baiju, Al-Haytham. Obviously Gilded Dreams kind of ended up getting power crept by this Flower of Paradise Lost set. But overall, I think it's safe to say that as we got into 3.1, 3.2, 3.3 and more and more patches, these sets were still very useful. Even if you weren't really playing Dendro teams originally in 3.0, you probably did end up playing it eventually, and you probably did want sets like this. So overall, the point is, with these new sets, even if this elemental skill set is mostly useful right now for fischl or Yaemiko or albedo, and Hunter set is probably even more niche than that there is a good chance, even if you don't personally see a use for these sets right now, there probably are going to be characters coming out within the next few patches that do use these sets. Especially because, as we know, the emblem set was very useful for Raiden, the Inazuma Archon, and then Deepwood ended up being very good for Nahida, the Sumeru Archon. That experience tells me one of these sets is probably going to be useful for the new Archon, whatever her kit is. Maybe her kit has something to do with changing HP, or it could be to do with elemental skill damage. So if you're someone like me who has quite a lot of my characters farmed up, I don't need to worry too much about my old characters, then I think it's worthwhile to farm these new sets a lot, because like I said, I don't know if I want a future character, there's a good chance they might be using one of these sets. And to be honest, even these 2-piece sets, normal attack and charge attack damage and elemental skill damage, are kind of universal. So if I get any good random pieces, I can still use them on some of my older characters. So anyway, those are my plans for 4.0. I hope you found this video helpful. Remember, anything to do with artifacts is very RNG, and min-maxing artifacts is very min-max. It's not necessary at all to complete floor 12 or to get your 36 stars. You don't need to worry too much about getting the perfect crit stats in your pieces. But if you're someone like me who's interested in min-maxing, then you'll be interested in that. Besides, there isn't that much else to do with resin. Anyway, thanks for watching.